Hello and welcome to the Football Word. I'm Doug Kyde. This is Zach Cox, and this is the final Football Word episode before we take a 5-week break, and we will come back for training camp, the Monday before training camp, to preview all things training camp. But we've got a packed show today, as usual. And first things first, Patriots had their ring ceremony at Robert Kraft's house on Friday night. You were patrolling the social media accounts throughout Friday night. What were your biggest takeaways from that big event?
Well, my biggest takeaway was that it just looked like an awesome time.
They
went fully all out for this event, as they do every year, seemingly every year that they have it. It was at Robert Kraft's, in his backyard. Basically, they erected a whole kind of tent, dance floor, kind of a bunch of tables. Really nice setup. They had a ton of confetti. They had every ring was locked up in this,
that was wild.
Sealed plastic box with a note from Robert Kraft saying, "Do not open until we say you can," basically. Yeah. And it looked like a wild time. I think my biggest takeaway from these things was the same as it was in 2015 when they received their ring for beating the Seahawks. This is really the only time you ever see Tom Brady fully cut loose and just enjoy himself.
Embrace the goatness.
Yeah, just because he's always always a little bit reserved. Even when you see him in most like public settings, he's not fully in celebratory, just I want to party mode. But he is in these. I mean, there's videos of him dancing on the dance floor, singing "Nothing But a G Thing." He was wearing the five Super Bowl rings, kind of doing the trolling in the videos with Martellus Bennett. Yep. You can tell he really relishes these moments, as he should. I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. And there was all sorts of, trolley type of details. They had to unlock the box that the rings were in, and the code to unlock it was 8:31, which was the time on the clock when they were, I think, trailing 28-3
I think it's
at that point.
When they got the ball.
When they got the ball back
after trailing 28-3.
At 28-3, and then there was 283 diamonds on the ring. I don't know if teams would have always done this type of stuff. I think it's almost like the internet culture that's almost taken over the Patriots to just troll everyone. And I mean, it's honestly kind of mean to the Falcons because you're trolling this team that's never won a Super Bowl. Like, they don't really have anything against the Falcons. Their GMs are Thomas Dimitroff and Scott Pioli, who used to work for the Patriots, guys who still have good relationships with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft and the Patriots. But it's all this stuff that fans will certainly enjoy. But one thing that was wild to me is that they had Snoop Dogg and Gucci Mane performing at this thing. And it's similar to the post-Super Bowl party that the Patriots threw, where I think they had Snoop Dogg and Pitbull and Lil Wayne, God knows who else performing. How much does Robert Kraft pay for this type of stuff? Because I can't imagine it's cheap to get Gucci Mane to do a private performance,
and the best part
even
is
for the Patriots.
Gucci Mane is an Atlanta guy.
Yeah.
He's an Atlanta Falcons fan. He grew up in Atlanta. He had to, I'm not sure how much he actually cares about the Falcons, but it's pretty hilarious that they went out and got one of the more recognizable Atlanta rappers to perform at their Super Bowl party after they beat the Falcons. It's ice cold. I love it. I think it's hilarious. But Robert Kraft definitely spares no expense for parties like this.
I'd love to know how much this thing costs because it's got to be just boatloads of money. And Snoop Dogg is a Steelers fan, right? So went through the Steelers to beat the Falcons, and for both of them right in there.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, these are private parties where us as media members, we're granted a good amount of access to a lot of stuff. This is completely off limits to everybody who's not directly involved with the team. So we weren't able to experience any of this firsthand. This was all through social media.
Did you peer over any fences or anything?
I did not. I was thinking of sneaking down to Brookline and seeing what I could do, but I thought
Chris Long wasn't there. You might have been able to sneak in as Chris Long.
No, that's actually a really good
idea.
Put
on some shoulder pads in the suit.
I know. I got to grow my hair out a little bit more. I got to get the man bun going. But damn, that's a good idea.
That was a missed opportunity on your part, I feel like. Most of the guys were back though. Martellus Bennett was back. LeGarrette Blount was back.
Markevious Mingo I saw in some of the pictures. I think Chris Long was the only notable Patriots player who did not make his return. Not sure why, but it didn't seem like a party you wanted to miss out on.
I know.
But my other big takeaway was Bill Belichick showing up with the fistfuls of rings. Just so I wonder how many, like what the combined weight of those rings was, because he brought all 7 of his Super Bowl rings plus 3 other rings, which I believe are the three rings from the Patriots Super Bowls that they reached but they did not win. So they were the 3 AFC Championship rings. 10 rings in his 2 hands. That's just crazy.
Yeah,
it's just the biggest power move of all time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so it would have been 2011, 2007, and 96 because he was the secondary coach on that team,
assistant
I believe,
head
defensive
coach.
coordinator. Yeah. I'm almost impressed that he still knows where all of them are.
I know.
I'm a person who kind of loses things a decent amount. I mean, I guess, rings are pretty important. I figured that maybe the losing rings aren't quite as important. You might misplace them.
I feel like he has those just in a box in his garage.
Leave them in like New Jersey or something. Leave them in Nantucket at one point and forget about them. But no, the weight of those rings has got to be pretty insane.
The photo of him with now he has both of his sons on the Patriots staff. Even though Brian Belichick was not a coach last year, he was in the scouting department, so he did get a ring. There's a picture of Bill with his arms around Steve and Brian Belichick. Just so many rings. Rings as far as the eye can see, because Steve has 2.
Yep.
Now Brian has 1. It's an embarrassment of riches.
It really is an embarrassment of riches. But yeah, the Patriots certainly know how to throw a ring ceremony at this point.
Yes,
They've certainly had enough experience doing it. It seems like they only get more and more impressive. Looked like a good ring. It was a cool ring.
Yeah, it was.
Had the 5 Lombardis on there.
Pretty similar to the one they got in 2015. It's got a blue background rather than a straight diamonds. But
there we go.
Yeah, I wrote a lot about World Series or not World Series. Sorry, Super Bowl rings last week. As you can tell, there's not a whole lot of actual football going on nowadays. So we dove into this pretty hard. But
we did have mini camp last week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we have one final OTA to watch on Tuesday, so that's tomorrow. It was supposed to be today. Yep. They moved it to tomorrow. I kind of appreciated that.
I'm fine with it.
It was good to have a day of kind of regaining our thoughts on everything. Then we'll get back after it tomorrow. And the Patriots have a final OTA not open to the media on Thursday, and then like we said, they'll go on that 5-week break. So I guess we've talked a lot about minicamp at this point. We had the Between the Tackles podcast on Thursday with Kevin Duffy from Mass Live. But do you just have any final thoughts on what you saw from those 3 days of practice that you just haven't expressed quite strongly enough yet?
I don't know. I think we've expressed them all pretty strongly.
We have.
But I think my biggest takeaway is just the fact that this team, it's hard to find areas to nitpick on this team, which is why we spent about 10 minutes talking about Cyrus Jones, like 3 dropped punts that he had 2 weeks ago, and the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo didn't look quite as NFL, I don't want to say NFL ready, but quite as
elite
impressive
NFL starter level.
Yes, NFL starter level as he did last year. Dwayne Allen had a couple of drops. These very minor things that we're looking at. We still don't know who the slot corner is going to be. Stuff like that. They're coming out of these practices for most teams in the NFL, there are pretty big glaring questions to answer. Patriots, they don't really have any of those. That's my big takeaway from the whole week.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because like you said about the slot cornerback thing, we don't really know who the slot cornerback is.
But it's not that they don't have good decent candidates for
because they've got Malcolm Butler and Stephon Gilmore as the starters. They'll probably have Patrick Chung playing near the line of scrimmage a lot. And Eric Rowe picked off Tom Brady in practice on Thursday. He had a pass breakup in practice. He's had an impressive minicamp, and he's a guy who basically doesn't even have a direct path at a role on this team. And he's better than a lot of teams' number 2 cornerbacks. So it really is an embarrassment of riches. One thing that I just want to get into real quick, and I know we did talk about it a decent amount on Between the Tackles, but just that Julian Edelman looks like himself out there. He looks really good. It doesn't seem like he's slowed down at all. He's 31 years old at this point, which I can't really knock him for because I'll be 31 in June. So I'm still feeling as spry as ever. I'm sure that he is too, even though he's got that kind of jacked up thing. What is it, his pinky finger that's kind of jacked up on there?
It's going, kind of sticking straight out there.
He can still catch passes. But just the contract that he signed, it's a bargain for the Patriots. I think that, I forgot who wrote it. I think it might have been Pro Football Talk. I don't know how much he would have got on the open market from another team. So it's a team-friendly deal. It's also a deal that made sense for Julian Edelman. And he's an underrated player just because of the production that he puts up. He's, 4th in the NFL in catches last season, something like that. But he doesn't get a lot of touchdowns, doesn't get a lot of deep passes, not a lot of yards per catch. But great fit for the system, and he still looks as good as ever, and him and Brandon Cooks will really be competing for that #1 target role in the Patriots offense. Yeah. And like you said, embarrassment of riches, offensive, defensive, everywhere. But yeah, we talked a lot about minicamp last week, but let's talk about what we want to see out of that final OTAs session. Never really know whether to say OTA or OTAs because there's an S at the end of activities. So I guess I should say OTAs every time.
Yeah.
Even if it's a single OTA. I don't know.
We'll figure it out in time.
We'll figure it out by Tuesday. So we're talking about players that we want to watch. We've covered almost all the bases at this point. We've done an OTAs preview. We've done a minicamp preview. Now we're doing one more OTAs preview. So we've talked about we've previewed players each time. Who's one more player that you're going to be watching at this OTA session?
One more player is a player that I did not really expect to be watching when this whole thing began a couple weeks back. And that's Kenny Moore, the undrafted cornerback out of Valdosta. Is it Valdosta or Valdosta?
Yeah, that's a good question.
We'll figure that out too.
I've always said Valdosta.
I've always said Valdosta, so I'll have to ask him tomorrow. Yeah. So undrafted cornerback out of either Valdosta or Valdosta State. Kind of an unheralded guy. I'll admit that I didn't know a whole lot about him when the Patriots signed him. Valdosta's a D2 school, so he's pretty under the radar there. But he's had a good week. He broke up a couple passes earlier in minicamp. He was running with not with the starters, but with the first team kind of. The way they do it in minicamp, for those of you who don't really know, they kind of split it with a Tom Brady group, Jimmy Garoppolo group, and a Jacoby Brissett group. Jacoby Brissett group is pretty much all rookies and deep depth players.
Right.
Kenny Moore started over there. By the end of the week, he was moved over. He was practicing with the players who are probably going to make this team. Not to say that he's going to make this team, but he's had a pretty good showing for a guy that nobody had really heard of coming into this week.
Yeah, I think it's from at least what I've experienced in these. It is pretty rare to see an undrafted guy in that group where it's Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo trading reps, and then Jacoby Brissett gets a lot of reps on the other side of the field, like you said, with the undrafted guys and the guys who, the DeAndrew White types who very bottom of the roster. But no, I've been impressed with Kenny Moore as well. Before I get on to my player, do you know where Valdosta State is?
Georgia, I believe.
Is it Georgia? I was going to guess either Mississippi or Ohio. It's always a fun game to play.
It is in Valdosta, Georgia.
Wow, Zach wins that one. My first player to watch, because we are going to do two of these, is Harvey Longy, because he's another undrafted guy who actually was playing on that other side of the field with the veteran players, and he's one that you could have kind of guessed would have been with that group that has a better chance of making the roster. Kenny Moore was a way under the radar signing when the Patriots brought him in. He actually played strong safety in college, and now he's playing cornerback with the Patriots, but he's a better size for a cornerback. He's 5'9", 190, has some good agility. Harvey Longy received a gigantic signing bonus. This guy might as well have been a draft pick. So to see him on that side of the field with Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo makes sense, but he broke up a pass from Garoppolo. That's one way that I know that he is on that side of the field. And he's just a good coverage linebacker, good athlete out there, and it'll be interesting to see if he stays on that side of the field for this Tuesday OTA session and whether he can make some other plays out there.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him once training camp starts up, when he can, because this camp is so kind of tilted towards skill players, towards receivers, defensive backs, quarterbacks, pass catching running backs. So as a coverage linebacker, he has been able to flash a little bit, show some plays, but I want to see the full scope of his game once all the pads come on.
Absolutely. One other guy that I'm watching is James O'Shaughnessy, the tight end. Patriots acquired him from the Kansas City Chiefs. They sent a 5th-round pick and then got a 6th-rounder back with O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
I believe that's what the trade was. He's just been catching a lot of passes out there, and that's always good to see a guy who's targeted heavily during these sessions because it means that he's getting open against the players that are covering him, and he seems like a decent athlete out there. I think it's him and Jacob Hollister, the undrafted tight end, are pretty similar players, but since O'Shaughnessy is the veteran, he's the guy who is working with Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo a lot more than Jacob Hollister, who's mostly working with Jacoby Brissett out there. So, I don't know, he's been a guy that I think I've been slightly impressed with, but he has yet to make that super flashy standout play. So I think that that's what we're kind of watching for in this final OTA session, for one of those guys to make that play where you say, wow, okay, he might be the real deal.
Yeah, that third tight end spot is still very much up for grabs between Hollister, O'Shaughnessy, Matt Lengel, and Sam Cotton. I'd say Hollister and O'Shaughnessy have definitely been the more visible of the two of the four players so far. I haven't really seen a ton from Lengel or Cotton, so I'd say those two definitely have the inside track right now. Last guy that I'm looking at, another undrafted guy, Austin Carr. Spent a lot of time basically all of his time working with Jacoby Brissett in that rookie group. Kind of came on a little bit slow. We didn't see much from him in that one OTA session we could watch. Even first day of minicamp, wasn't really too visible, didn't have a ton of plays, but he made some really good catches over the last 2 days. I think he's going to be a guy who probably doesn't have a great shot of making the team this year, but I think the Patriots are very excited with what the future potential he brings. He was obviously tremendously productive at Northwestern last year. I think he can easily parlay this into a practice squad spot, or maybe even a roster spot if he really impresses in training camp.
Yeah, it would probably take an injury for him to make the team, but that's always possible at every position on any team. But yeah, he's a guy that, if another player is going to get moved over to that veteran group, it could be him. He's a guy who has stood out quite a few times. Safety David Jones is another one who potentially could get moved over to that group, especially since Deron Harmon is kind of slowly being worked back into team drills. One thing that I just kind of want to shut down a little bit this early in the process while we are talking about tight ends is that when I did my mailbag this week, I had probably like 5 or 6 people asking me, is Dwayne Allen, on the chopping block?
Is he a bust, kid?
Yeah, is he going to be a bust? What's wrong with Dwayne Allen? Let's all just take a gigantic chill pill on this one. Yes, Dwayne Allen has had some drops in practice. He had 2 drops all of last season with the Indianapolis Colts, so this could just be him getting used to working with new quarterbacks. He's worked with Andrew Luck with the Colts for quite a while. He's probably used to catching passes from a different kind of thrower. Now that he's with Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo, let's give it at least into the preseason before we start talking about this guy potentially being cut, because, they gave up a decent amount for him. He's on the roster. He's as close to of a lock as you probably can be without being a lock on this team, because he could get cut, but at this point, let's not even put that on the table to talk about.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier in the show about how you're hearing a lot about Dwayne Allen's drops because there's not a whole lot of negatives to point. Nobody wants to cover a team going in saying everything is awesome at all times. We got to find some nits to pick. That's one of the nits this past week. But yeah, again, nothing to freak out over. I think. Plus, he's known as more of a blocking tight end anyway. So even if this was, say, happening in training camp, it's not technically his strong suit. Anyway, let's just, like you said, relax. Wait a little bit. Wait to start freaking out until maybe August or so.
Yeah, if the drops continue into the preseason, maybe we can start talking about it.
Like you mentioned too, Rob Gronkowski had like 15 drops in minicamp
last year.
He had a very, very bad preseason hands-wise, and look how he turned out.
Yeah, he had 1 drop last season, 8 games or whatever it was. So that will do it for today's show. One other thing that we will be watching, will Malcolm Butler be back on the field? Will Lawrence Guy be back on the field? Coney Ely left practice midway through. Will he still be on the field, or will he be back on the field? Will the Patriots make any moves before their final OTA session? But we will cover all of that on NESN.com. We will have one final Between the Tackles podcast, hopefully with Michaela Vernava, if she's feeling healthy enough for it, on Thursday. But until then, keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots news and analysis.